You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean,
Watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles. And you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of the Resistance, Thursday, March 7th. I hope you're well. I hope I can be your MBFF. That is my dream, of course, at all times. Partly because I'm needy, but because I like friends. I'm on Twitter at Dean Obeidallah, Facebook.com/Dean of Radio, where you can watch the show right now. Before we get into what we have to talk about, because there's a lot to talk about, a little humor. Here's Colbert last night on this remarkable poll that we talked about last night on the show with Julian Zelizer about what percentage of Americans in a new poll that came out yesterday believe that Donald Trump is a criminal, that he committed crimes before he got in office. What percentage do you think, folks? 50%? 40%? 52%? Nope, 64%. And here's Colbert's take. Clip number 1, please.
The majority of Americans think he is guilty of something. This is true. According to a poll that came out yesterday, 64% of Americans thought Trump had committed crimes before he became president, including 33% of Republicans. And yet, his approval rating with Republicans is 82%. Police! Police! He just stole my wallet. Stop that man. I want to vote for him.
That was funny stuff there. And it is remarkable. Think about it. The Republicans, so you have a big percentage of Republicans who believe Donald Trump is a criminal. If you believe someone's committed a crime, hence they are a criminal. Not convicted, I give you that, but still a criminal. But they still like him. They still like him. Some of the good people, some of the big right-wing Christians love him. Even though he's a criminal, cheated on his wife, he's sexist, he's bigoted, he's racist, corrupt, they still like him. Why? Because it's what Jesus wouldn't do, but they do it because they want to impose Christian Sharia law. Then here was Colbert last night on Donald Trump ordering Ivanka Trump's security clearance to be approved over objections. Let's hear clip number 2, please.
Ivanka Trump. Wow. She got a top secret security clearance. All Barack Obama's daughters got was a puppy. But it makes sense because Ivanka needs classified intel on China's human rights abuses to see if it is possible to pay her workers any less. Trump, oh no. Some of Ivanka's workers are here tonight, evidently. Tighten up on those seams.
So I like that very much. By the way, it's not nepotism that Donald Trump overruled government officials to give Ivanka Trump her security clearance. It's not nepotism that Donald Trump overruled intel agencies, including the CIA, to give Jared Kushner clearance. It's not nepotism. That's the wrong ism. It's authoritarianism. That's the ism we're talking about here. That Donald Trump believes he's above the law, his family's above the law. He will overrule even the Central Intelligence Agencies and career intel officials who express concerns because Trump knows better. So he will do whatever he wants. And that's what dictators do. That's what authoritarian leaders do. And right now, we're waiting for news on Paul Manafort, Donald Trump's former campaign manager and longtime friend, the man who bought an apartment from him in the mid-2000s, 2006, for $3+ million in cash. A man he's known since the 1980s when he was a partner with Roger Stone and their lobbying firm, is about to get sentenced in federal court. But Trump will tell you he doesn't know who that guy is. I barely know Manafort because he's a liar. So, couple of things I want to touch on the top, and then I'd love to hear from you. Second, we'll get into why would the Democrats even consider Fox News for a debate in 2020? Now, they're not going to, but why would you even consider? But first, let's pick up a little bit. Last night, we covered in great detail the case of Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. And I want to update you a little bit on what's developed in the last 20 minutes on the case and a little since last night. The House just voted overwhelmingly with about a little over 20 Republicans voting no on a resolution that condemns all bigotry and hate. And actually in great detail. It doesn't mention Congresswoman Omar by name. It goes through white supremacy. It begins with anti-Semitism, but it also condemns anti-Muslim bigotry, white supremacy. And it's actually in great detail. It's like a 4 or 5 page resolution on it. And it's passing it. And I think this issue will probably die down now on some level. But last night during the show and even after the show, 3 of the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates chimed in. And they didn't have to. So this takes a certain level of courage. You can like these candidates or not. That doesn't matter. I'm trying to get at politicians generally avoid controversy unless they're the ones in the controversy. But 3 of them did not. 3 of them came out and defended Congresswoman Omar. Senator Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, and Liz Warren. And all 3 issued statements that denounced anti-Semitism, of course, but in varying degrees defended Congresswoman Omar. Bernie Sanders said that condemning anti-Semitism, that was from the resolution today. Bernie Sanders said, we must not, however, equate anti-Semitism with legitimate criticism of the right-wing Netanyahu government in Israel. Rather, we must develop an even-handed Middle East policy which brings Israelis and Palestinians together for a lasting peace. Adding, what I fear is going on in the House now is an effort to target Congressman Omar as a way of stifling that debate. That's wrong. Senator Kamala Harris, who also first slammed anti-Semitism, rightfully so, it is vile and despicable. She went on, though, to add, but like some of my colleagues in the Congressional Black Caucus, I am concerned that the spotlight being put on Congresswoman Omar may put her at risk, because you may or may not know this, Congresswoman Omar has been subject to numerous death threats. And then Senator Liz Warren put out a statement, again, first part condemning anti-Semitism, and then going on to add, branding criticism of Israel as automatically anti-Semitic has a chilling effect on our public discourse. It makes it harder to achieve peaceful solution between Israelis and Palestinians. Threats of violence like those made against Representative Omar are never acceptable. So that was pretty clear, and they didn't have to come out. That's the remarkable part. You can just sit this out if you want to, like most of the candidates running for president in 2020 did on the Democratic side. Then, about a half hour ago or 45 minutes ago, the RNC chair, Ronna McDaniels, who used to be known as Ronna Romney McDaniels, but had to change her name because the Romney part upset Donald Trump, and I'm not kidding, she chimed in and made it very clear in her view as the chair of the Republican Party and speaking for the GOP, what's acceptable for us to say in this country and what's not on dealing with the Middle East. And here was her point-blank comments. Here's clip number 6, please.
By allowing her to stay on the Foreign Affairs Committee, by refusing to name her in this resolution, is saying this type of mentality, this type of thought process is allowed in our party. It can exist in our party because we refuse to condemn it. And that, I think, is frightening for our country. And let's be very clear, anti-Israel is code for anti-Semitism.
So anti-Israel is code for anti-Semitism. On the right, anti-Israel means any criticism of their beloved Benjamin Netanyahu and his policies. Benjamin Netanyahu is part of the GOP. He is the Trump of the Middle East. He is equally as corrupt. He's on the verge of being indicted. The Attorney General in Israel has recommended indictment. They're having hearings on that. Benjamin Netanyahu's wife has already been indicted for corruption in office there as the First Lady. So they have that in common. And as you might recall, Benjamin Netanyahu did everything he could to undermine President Obama. He even gave a speech in Congress when invited by Republicans, and Democrats said, don't do this, still did it to embarrass our president, President Obama. And to them, there's no game with them. It's very clear to them. Criticism of Israel equals anti-Semitism. And what's really unfortunate and dangerous, they're diluting what anti-Semitism is at a time when we've seen a quantified spike in anti-Semitism in this country. And the idea of criticism of Netanyahu's policies would be on the right, somehow bigotry is absolutely wrong. It's diluting what really anti-Semitism is. And to me, it's also part of Christian Sharia law. I mean, the ones on the far right, the evangelicals on the right, they will tell you this. I mean, their vision is that one day Jesus returns, and in their belief system, that in the period of time before Jesus returns, this tribulation period, 2/3 of the Jews will die, and the last third will convert to Christianity. So their end game with their policy, as opposed to Jewish Americans who are pragmatic on this, I can have discussions even with right-wing Jewish Americans on this issue, and we might not always agree, but we can find some common ground. With the dogmatic Christian evangelicals, you can't, because it's not about Israel. It's not about Jews. They have a long history of anti-Semitism on the right. It's about Jesus returning. And that's all it's about. Just like stopping women from controlling their own bodies. It's Christian Sharia law. In fact, tonight we're going to have the president of Planned Parenthood on, the new president, to talk about Donald Trump's push for Christian Sharia law in this country. She won't use that term. I won't, because I'm not going to play games. There's no need to be walk around on tenderfoot here, and the idea this is ridiculous. You've got to be very clear about what's going on. So, and by the way, to remind people, and I'm not trying to belabor the Omar thing, we talked about it yesterday at length, before any of her comments that were deemed anti-Semitic, and that was in mid-February when her tweet about it's all about the Benjamins, and she apologized for that and said, I didn't know it was a trope, and she said, I learned. Before that, at the end of January, when she was first appointed to the Foreign Affairs Commission, Foreign Relations Committee, just want to remind people, Congressman Lee Zeldin from New York here was a Republican and very, very pro-Netanyahu, also supported Trump's ban on all Muslims, also at his fundraisers had people like Sebastian Gorka and Steve Bannon. So Lee Zeldin attacked the appointment right away and said in his tweet on January 29th, this is way before the Benjamins thing and way before the new thing, tweeted, Representative Ilhan Omar was also put on the committee with oversight of U.S. foreign policy. Crazy to watch what House Democrats are empowering, elevating. Crazy to watch that they put a Muslim black. He's palled around with some bigots and hateful people, and he kept going after her for weeks before the whole Benjamins thing. And I even talked to her about it when I interviewed her like a week after the incident with Congressman Zeldin. And she said online, on Twitter, I offered him, let's have tea, Somali tea, she said, in our offices here. And at first he said yes, and then he said, no, I can't because you support BDS. And to him, then it's inherently anti-Semitic to him. So for some people, they truly feel her comments were anti-Semitic. Some Jewish people, and there's been a good faith debate in that community, and that's for that community to decide. I'm not part of that community. I defer to the Jewish Americans. To others, it's simply an opportunity to shut her down. And the question is, what happens next with her? Will she talk about the Middle East? And I was watching an interview, and we actually have Roland Martin on the third hour. On his show, I was watching a clip of it. It's online. He had the former press secretary for Andre Carson. I'm not sure how many of you know of Congressman Andre Carson. Really nice guy. He's been there since about 2008 in Congress. He's from Indiana. He's the second Muslim elected. Most people know Keith Ellison. Andre's kind of quiet. He doesn't even talk about the Middle East that much. He's quiet. Well, she made a point on Roland's show yesterday that he didn't even talk about the Middle East, and he would get called anti-Semitic by some of the right-wing Israel supporters simply because of he's Muslim. We heard the same thing against Rashida Tlaib. She said nothing except being of Palestinian heritage and being Muslim, she's been labeled anti-Semitic. Keith Ellison, same thing. Ilhan Omar. And when you see this pattern, it's troubling because for some, it's about truly being concerned about anti-Semitism. For others, as the RNC chair just said, point blank, the idea anti-Israel is code for anti-Semitism. It's trying to stop debate. In fact, they actually tried to pass a law, and the Senate Republicans, a majority, voted for it, to say that if you were to boycott products or goods from the state of Israel because you object to their policies, you could then be banned from getting any work with the federal government. But you have to sign an oath, literally an oath, saying, I will not boycott any products from the state of Israel or goods or services. And thankfully, some Democrats broke away. They got a majority. In the House, they said they're not even voting on it. But numerous states have passed that same identical legislation on BDS. I'm not part of BDS, which is boycott, divestment, sanctions. But this is America. If you don't like something politically, you don't get state action to try to silence people. I would not do it from the other end, even though I'm pro-Palestinian. My family's Palestinian. I would never try to silence people who are even pro-Netanyahu. I would never say state action. That's ridiculous. Any kind of speech you don't like, you answer it with speech, not with state action. And of course, those laws are unconstitutional. But they're beyond unconstitutional. They're un-American. It's un-American to say, I'm going to use a state action to silence political views I don't agree with, whatever the topic is. You imagine they would pass laws saying that I can't boycott goods and services from Saudi Arabia over the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, and if I do, I can't get any jobs with the state where I live or the federal government. That's just as ridiculous, just as wrong, just as unconstitutional, and just as un-American. So there's a sense that there's a generational shift going on. I think there's some supporters on the right who are very concerned that polls showed the younger generation, it was a Pew poll just last year, showed younger Americans 18 to 30 evenly split on which side do they stand with Israel or Palestine, which I think is a horrible question. I think the question is, do you stand with peace? Do you want peace? And how are we going to get it? That should be the questions. But in any event, older generations, it skews way overwhelmingly standing with Israel. And it's changing in America, just like other issues evolved, just like gay marriage evolved over time. And so you've got this kind of desperation going on. And I'm going to tell you, the younger people who are the future of the Democratic Party, the grassroots, are much more even-handed on the Middle East. And maybe that's what we need to bring the parties together for peace. Because if you're Netanyahu, why would you make concessions when you've got Trump 150% behind you? But you had an administration that pushes you more. Maybe you make some concessions. Maybe you have a just peace. I'm not sure. So look, we could take some calls on that. Another quick thing I want to touch on, I have Angelo Carus on later to talk about it a little bit more, but this idea that Tom Perez, the DNC chair, and I understand why, it sounded good. We might even have a debate on Fox News. Are you kidding me? On Fox News? Well, and it took the article from the New Yorker, which we'll go through in great detail later with Angelo from Media Matters, which documented how Fox News is part of the Trump administration. We all knew it, but this showed they actually leaked to him 1 to 2 questions for the debates, that they sat on a story that was negative about Trump, about Stormy Daniels. They knew about it, apparently maybe before others. They sat on it. The fact Sean Hannity is at events, doesn't even have to hang out with the public, with the Secret Service. He gets to hang out with the administration officials like he's part of the administration. And Bill Shine, a former high-level Fox News executive, is now part of the White House comms team. Why would you ever even think about it? Why would you even contemplate? And Tom Perez said, literally after that article, we're not doing it. And then today, Fox News' Chris Wallace attacked the Democrats, saying it's Fox derangement syndrome. Just to remind everyone, I know this is slightly going long. I'll go another minute or two, and then we'll take a break, and I want to hear from you. In April 2013, to remind everyone, because some on the right are like, look at the Democrats, they're afraid of being on Fox News. April 2013, then Reince Priebus, RNC chair, said there'll be no debates on CNN or NBC because they were developing documentary films about Hillary Clinton that he viewed as going to be commercials. Then in August 2013, the RNC formally voted, saying we're not going to allow CNN or NBC to have any Republican debates unless they pull those films they were developing. And in that time they voted, they said, the film is attempting to put a thumb on the scales. That's their term. Meanwhile, Fox News has got like a thumb, a hand, an entire body, weights on the scale. And RNC chair Reince Priebus put it very bluntly. He said about MSNBC, I want to choose moderators that are actually interested in the Republican Party and our nominees. So that was his standard. I want moderators on channels that are actually interested in the Republican Party and our nominees. So why would we even, because it doesn't matter what ground rules they agree to, they are part of this administration. They're not covering it. They're not pro. They are in it. They are part of it. They can never allow them to do it. They would do everything they could to sabotage us. And by the way, in 2016, how many GOP debates were on MSNBC? 0. They didn't let us have any debates then anyway. So it's just a game. So I'd love to talk to you about either topic. You're my guest right to the top of the hour, 866-997-4748, right here on The Dean Obeidallah Show.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
Voting is the most important civil right of our era because the right to vote